Shoot by Justin Bastyr. The sun was rising on a beautiful day, peeking across the horizon as our hero stared at the orange sky. He gazed into the distance, imagining the dangerous journey he must embark upon in order to rescue his captured damsel in distress, Princess Jasmine. He was given this dangerous task by the King and Queen, Rex and Margaret. Our hero and Jasmine have known each other for quite some time, leading to a romance brewing between the two of them. However, our hero was no prince. He was merely a blacksmith in the Blackshear Kingdom. The King and Queen kept him from pursuing his love due to his important role in the kingdom as a blacksmith. Miraculously, he was called upon due to all of the other knights failing to rescue the maiden. This is his moment, the moment to prove himself worthy of having her hand. His
Joseph
name is
Fredrickson.
Joseph. This is not your job, Joseph.
I can do what I want, narrator.
Can we please continue on with the story?
Fine.
Joseph, with a less enthusiastic look on his face, began walking in the direction of the ungodly abandoned castle in the middle of the Blackshear forest, where the maiden was being kept hostage. The castle was inhabited by a villain like no other, striking fear in all who gazed upon his grisly self. His name was Fred. Do not let the name fool you into believing he was a pushover. Fred was only named Fred due to him choosing his own name for himself once he reached adulthood. Fred was just not creative. Even though all would want to see the maiden rescued, Joseph still had a deep internal struggle that needed to be dealt with before meeting Fred. Joseph always believed in keeping peace as long as possible, which is rather ironic in regards to his vocation of being a blacksmith. Nevertheless, he did not long to have to resort to such violence, yet he would in order to save Jasmine. Fred only fought in the most barbaric of ways. Thankfully, Joseph was not alone. Joseph had his friends alongside him for this noble journey. Troy, Anthony, and Enoch came to accompany him for the quest. None of them knew, though, what awaited them in the depths of the forest, for no one ever seemed to make it back out. Some even wondered if any who journeyed into the forest were still alive. For Joseph's friends, they knew that there would at least be a banquet if they were victorious, which seemed definitely worth it, given that all of them were still going to the town's head maestro on the weekends. "How big of a meal do you think we'll get if we make it back?" asked Troy.
Are you being serious?
"Yes, why would I lie about that?"
Are all of you doing this for food?
Yes.
All of them stated in unison. Joseph shook his head, and the motley crew continued trekking towards the edge of the woods. As they approached, a heavy fog met them before they stepped into the Blackshear forest, making the tree line rather difficult to see. All of them stared at the forest they had heard tales about all their lives, wondering if any of them were true. Anthony was the first to break the silence.
That food better be bussin',
Anthony said with as little excitement as possible as they all crept into the Blackshear forest. Each of them walked slowly into the fog, with Joseph walking in last, hoping he wasn't leading all of his friends to the ultimate doom. Joseph shook his head, making the thought leave his mind as he ran to the front to take his entourage through the fog. A collective sigh of relief could be heard from the group as they emerged on the other side of the fog. That was the longest 94 seconds of their lives. Surprisingly, they found themselves in the middle of the woods, seeing normal-looking trees in every single direction, with no life in sight nor sound in earshot. Then Enoch laid eyes on a clearing off in the distance. Troy turned his head and squinted his eyes, realizing the joyous sight right in front of him and sprinting at full speed. Everyone else darted after him in efforts to catch up to their comrade.
Can it be?
Anthony asked in awe.
It is.
Enoch said in equal awe.
Foodland!
Troy screamed at the top of his lungs as he jumped on a flower that was made of chocolate. Joseph watched as he saw all of his companions sprint into the field of exquisite delights, which was its true name, as posted by the entrance. Troy just saw food and could not control himself. Joseph smiled and ran after his friends and joined them in the fun, eating treat upon treat until he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. He froze, wondering if a minion of Fred was coming to end their quest, or if this place was more dangerous than presumed. Sweat began to take hold of Joseph's freckled complexion.
Hey guys.
Muffled a familiar voice with a face full of sweets.
Madam Faith?
Joseph responded in shock.
Look around you. All those who have been sent before are here. We have only been here for a couple days.
Joseph looked around and realized the sugar-high knight was right. Joseph and his companions were also able to see a group of about 50 knights and other men of honor, all shoveling food into their mouths. The earliest knight sent to rescue Jasmine was sent over a year ago. Joseph's shocked face began to slowly turn into a face full of pure horror. He grabbed all of his friends and pulled them forward, running until they were on the other side of the field.
Why'd you do that?
Troy said, full of anger as he punched Joseph in the shoulder.
You don't understand, guys.
Joseph stammered, while bent over and out of breath.
Think about it. The food in there has kept those guys there for who knows how long. The food has messed up their sense of time.
Anthony, Troy, and Enoch all looked down at the ground, feeling pity for the knights and other men of honor.
Let's go save Jasmine,
Joseph said as he began walking forward. Everyone else followed, with Troy walking in the back slowly, wishing he could have taken one more bite. None of them knew how long they were in the field of exquisite delights. All hoped that they were not in there for too long. The wonders in their minds did not last long, though, because the castle was already in sight. The castle was only a quarter-mile from where all the knights and men of honor were still eating everything found in their peripheral vision. The crew sprinted towards the castle, ready to storm the gates, until a large guard made them all come to an abrupt halt.
You will never get by me! I am the all-powerful potatoes!
Roared the guard. Fred's guard was not the brightest. Yes, the only guard and servant of Fred chose his own name as well, as long as Fred approved. Joseph and everyone began chuckling. Chuckling may be an understatement.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard,
exclaimed Troy in the middle of tears. His laugh quickly ended as Potatoes picked him up with one arm and threw him 10 feet back from the group.
Hey, that's not cool.
Anthony got off before having the same fate happen to him. Enoch did not even get a word off before the guard gave him the same treatment. Potatoes advanced towards Joseph with a boisterous look on his face. Joseph did not know what to do. Before Joseph could act, he found himself being held in the air by the powerful guard. Just as Potatoes was about to hurl Joseph, someone came and hit Potatoes right over the head with a large branch. Potatoes crumpled, and Joseph was able to land on all fours and get back up to see his rescuer.
Is that really you, Aurora?
Joseph asked with a grin creeping across his face.
Yeah, it's me, Joseph.
Aurora responded. Joseph embraced his long-lost friend, and the rest of the group joined in on the hug, rejoicing after seeing Jasmine's best friend for the first time in 6 months. No one had known where she went, and were even wondering if she was still alive.
I thought you were dead,
Joseph said quietly.
Well, I'm here, aren't I?
Aurora retorted sarcastically.
I'm sorry. I knew none of us were allowed to leave the kingdom to find Jasmine, but I just couldn't handle it. I went after her myself and have been camping near the castle this whole time, getting my food from those crazy people about a quarter-mile away.
Well, we're glad you're okay,
Joseph said.
Why haven't you gone to the castle, though?
I haven't been able to best the guards and have been too scared to try again unless I had help.
Aurora said.
I am so glad you guys came. Now come on, let's go save Jasmine.
Aurora sprinted off towards the gate, which was unsurprisingly unlocked thanks to Potatoes before he became the equivalent of a sack of potatoes on the ground. The group charged the inside of the castle and found themselves in a large room with a familiar face looking at them with hope from behind the bars of a steel cage.
Joseph!
Jasmine called.
Jasmine!
Joseph called back as he began running towards the cage to set his maiden free.
Not so fast,
A powerful voice boomed from across the room. All eyes gazed upon Fred as he entered the room with a mace in one hand and a shield in the other, towering over every individual in the room.
I'm surprised you all made it through my field of exquisite delights.
Every jaw dropped as he completed his statement.
You made that?
Enoch stammered.
I did,
Fred retorted.
I see I shouldn't have underestimated all of you, especially you.
Fred turned on this statement directly to Joseph and began advancing towards him.
Let her go,
Joseph said with all of his might.
I challenge you to the most formidable type of dueling imaginable,
Boomed Fred as he tossed his mace and shield to the side.
No, Joseph, don't do it, man.
Shook Anthony.
Whatever it takes for my love,
Joseph said strongly as he held his right fist in the air over the palm of his left hand.
So be it, little one.
Fred sneered as he reciprocated the gesture, standing nose to nose with Joseph after squatting down to Joseph's height.
I can't watch.
Aurora squeaked as all in the room besides Fred and Joseph looked away in terror.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot!
Yelled the two combatants at the top of their lungs, piercing every eardrum in the room and even shattering nearby glass. Anthony was the first to turn and stared in disbelief at the scene he viewed, smiling as he looked down at Joseph's and Fred's hands. Joseph and Fred were still staring eye to eye, both unaware of the results. The rest of the group turned to look at the hands cast, with Aurora being the last to see.
I can't believe it.
Whispered Aurora. Enoch, Troy, and Anthony all rejoiced as Joseph and Fred looked down at their hands. Fred had put out scissors, and Joseph had cast rock.
No, that's impossible. How did you beat me?
come on, man.
Joseph said.
Everyone always puts out scissors first.
Fred dropped to his knees, sobbing over his first loss ever in rock, paper, scissors.
Better luck next time,
Enoch gloated to a crying Fred. Joseph ran over to the cage after being handed the key by a tear-stained Fred and unlocked the door for his princess, grabbing her by the waist and spinning her around as he pulled her out of the cage.
You found me.
Princess Jasmine smiled with the biggest grin on her face.
Anything for you,
Joseph said sweetly. The group approached Jasmine, and Aurora ran over and nearly tackled her.
I am so glad we can go back to hanging out.
Aurora joyfully stated.
Me too, Aurora.
Jasmine said through her tears.
I was getting so tired of eating the same food. Fred literally only eats chicken nuggets and macaroni every day like a child.
Fred sobbed harder and was still on the ground. Joseph walked over to the still crying Fred and patted him on the shoulder.
It's okay, Fred,
Joseph said in an effort to keep Fred from crying any louder.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done what I did.
Fred said, wiping away tears.
I won't ever do anything like that again.
That's good to hear,
Joseph said as he nodded his head and crossed his arms, standing in a relaxed manner after taking a deep breath.
I'm still getting arrested, aren't I?
Fred asked.
Yep.
Dang it.
Fred sighed as he lowered his head.
You kidnap one princess, and this is what happens.
Troy and Enoch escorted Fred out of the room and back outside the abandoned castle. Joseph, Jasmine, Aurora, and Anthony followed. The group began marching back victoriously to the Blackshear Kingdom. Anthony stopped once the group approached Potato's unconscious self and put Potatoes over his shoulder, walking up next to Joseph and Jasmine.
So, when will the two of you be getting married?
Anthony gestured at the two of them. Joseph and Jasmine both blushed and looked away from each other. After no response, Anthony turned his gaze and walked away.
Shut up, Anthony,
Joseph shot back with a smile on his face.
I guess you'll have to find out, Lord willing.
The group carried on back to the Blackshear Kingdom, acquiring the knights and other men of honor from the Field of Exquisite Delights after mentioning the idea of a large feast back in the kingdom. The party arrived shortly after, for the distance between the kingdom and the abandoned castle was not even a mile. Fred and Potatoes found themselves tossed into the dungeon, and our heroes were treated as the heroes they were, being a part of the grandest feast in over 50 years. To Joseph and Jasmine's surprise, the king nodded at the two of them when he caught them holding each other's hands during the feast. Joseph and Jasmine embraced one another with indescribable joy. Joseph and Jasmine lived happily ever after, and so did the rest of the courageous crew. Also, don't worry, the food was indeed bussin', unequivocally.